Thank you for being here. I'm Andy Rich, and I'm the Dean of the Colin Powell School here at the City College of New York. And I want to welcome you to a memorial service for our colleague, Asha Samad-Matías. For those of you who are visitors to City College, I welcome you to the campus. Many of you are returning to the college, having been here for many years before now. We are so pleased to be joined today by Asha's daughter, Lala Yasmin Matias, who's been the driving force behind this memorial service and someone we've really gotten to know, particularly over the last year for me and for many of you over a much longer period, really, I think, your whole life. And I know we have many of Asha's friends, we have Asha's former students, and of course, Asha's colleagues here at City College. We're not joined today by CCNY's presidents Vince Boudreau or the provost Tony List, but both wanted to be here and had conflicts they just simply could not get out of, and so I share their greetings for them. And we know there were a lot of others who wanted to join us but couldn't be here, but we are truly glad to be together and to have you here. The Colin Powell School is the home to the social sciences, and Asha was a part of our faculty. I have been dean for about 5.5 years. Asha was a member of our faculty for 50 years. She came to CCNY in 1973 and she never left. She never retired. I think she was thinking about retiring, but she never got to do it. Her longevity alone is extraordinary, and so is her impact. By my count, over her 50 years, Asha easily taught more than 12,000 students. That's roughly the size of the undergraduate population for the entire college today. So that is an extraordinary reach. To all of those thousands of students, Asha brought a perspective, a background, and an expertise that were almost unique among our faculty, especially when she started here in the 1970s. Asha joined us soon after the 1969 student uprising that opened City College the gates to black and brown students and nearly tripled our size. It was a tumultuous time on our campus, in our city, and in our world, and Asha joined the campus with an understanding of tumult and an appreciation for the importance of change, of progress. She had an understanding of diverse cultures, religions, ethnicities, and of race, and an enthusiasm for training new generations of diverse leaders to understand power, institutions, culture, and the differences among us. She was, for much of her career, one of the only hijab-wearing members of the faculty, an important beacon for female students in particular who also wear hijabs, and she was a role model. She was a fierce advocate for the students of this college. Over the course of her 50 years at City College, she taught across a range of programs and departments, from Black Studies to Anthropology. She served for a time as director of the Women's Studies program. In every unit, Asha was committed to progress and to diversifying the curriculum. She spoke, I'm told, 5 languages and was known for using them at times in the classroom, holding students to high standards, making them engage deeply with the most pressing global and local issues of our times. Her signature courses focused on medical anthropology and always put human rights at the core of what students were studying. She was an expert on immigrant and refugee rights, and she spent years conducting human rights work within and outside of the academy. You know, I didn't have the privilege of knowing Asha well. We met a few times soon after I became dean in 2019. I recall that she made an appointment a couple months after I had started as dean just to get to know me, and my strong suspicion is that she was kind of going to size me up, which I would have done too, and I have no idea. She had a good poker face. I don't know how she sized me up or what she thought, but it does occur to me that she must have lived through at least a dozen deans in the course of her time at City College and probably thought she'd see more after me, and we're only, frankly, sorry she isn't here to see more. I don't remember much about the conversation. I do remember she was a little bit suspicious. She was testing me. The thing I do remember most, though, and I don't remember the words, was that we connected over the mission of the college and the values of the college. And frankly, my sense was, if I could read her at all, was once she got a sense that I knew what this place was, what the mission of the place is, what the values of City College are, then she was a little bit willing to accept me and give me a warmer chance, a stronger chance to be her colleague. She, in that conversation, and at least 2 other conversations that I can remember, helped me understand her work, her history, and her role at the institution, the values that she held as most important, and she wanted to make sure that I knew that those were the same values that City College holds as most important and as what we should be striving for. I remember marveling at her soft-spoken tenacity, her belief in her students, and her commitment to the possibilities that CCNY makes possible in our city and our society. Many of you knew her far better than me as a mentor, as a friend, and we'll hear from many of you over the course of today. But on behalf of the senior administration of the college, I want to extend my deepest condolences to the family and to everyone who knew her well. Today's service, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's been planned very much by Lala, and we thank you for that. It has also been planned by Professor Loti Silver, the Chair of Anthropology and Interdisciplinary Programs. Loti, thank you very much for everything you've done to make this possible. And I want to thank Daniel Gila, our events manager, who's also played an extraordinarily important logistical role. In a moment, I want to direct your attention to the screen for a short video about Asha and her life, and then we will have speakers. And I invite speakers just to come up one after the other in the order in which they're listed in the program, and I believe we'll be ending with another video as well as with a reception. And it probably is obvious, but I want to make sure everyone has noticed that today is the day after what would have been Asha's 83rd birthday. And so a very nice moment for us to be together, and Lala has brought a cake so that we can in all ways celebrate Asha's memory and her life. With that, I'll direct your attention to the screen.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? That was really beautiful. Thank you for putting that together. I'm Lottie Silber, and on behalf of my colleagues in the Department of Anthropology and Interdisciplinary Programs, it's an honor to share a few words to commemorate our dear colleague, Professor Margaríta-Asha Samad-Matías. And I have to also give my thanks to Dean Rich, to his incredible team, Daniel Gila, Jose, Alvaro Silva, and our very own Stephanie Barnes for making this memorial possible. As you will hear throughout this celebration of her career and her life, Professor Samad-Matías was a passionate and committed member of our faculty. Those 50 years of teaching and service to the City College of New York, she was an integral member the entire time of the department and to the many other allied departments. As we saw in the image, in one of them, in 2021, she also received the Colin Powell School Faculty Teaching Award, which was very important to her. And in May 2023, she did receive that extraordinary honor with the CCNY Distinguished Service Award. And these recognitions don't fully capture the way that Professor Matías lived and breathed this institution, the breadth and depth of her knowledge, and the extraordinary way that she accompanied generations, those 12,000 students the Dean alluded to, through their academic journeys. I first met Professor Samad-Matías in the fall of 2012. I was a recently tenured faculty member joining the department after many years of service at the CCNY downtown campus. Anthropology was a small department comprised of senior and well-established scholars who had been teaching together for decades. Professor Samad-Matías welcomed me into the fold, and we worked together to establish a beautiful sequencing of courses in medical anthropology. This was just one of her many areas of expertise that supported students in pre-health tracks. For many, it was the first opportunity to think critically about biomedicine and understand that there are other ways that people around the world define health and healing. Given that our offices were across from each other, I benefited from Professor Samad-Matías's wise counsel and witnessed firsthand her boundless energy for teaching and mentoring. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Professor Samad-Matías was the first to arrive and the last to leave. She taught back-to-back courses throughout the day and always had an enormous cohort of students that met with her before and after classes. The energy was just palpable. She was known for holding her students to extraordinary standards and making them address current events, past histories, and radical social change. She served over the years as faculty advisor to so many student associations and interest groups, helping start, for example, Women in Islam and, of course, in anthropology. She was an expert on immigrant and refugee rights, and as we came to know her, even though she didn't perform these activities for us, she conducted human rights works within and outside of the academy and provided expert testimony for decades on political asylum and refugee cases in places such as Canada, the UK, and here in the United States. She embodied just the very best of what we now today call public scholarship. Before the time there was actually a word for it, and modeled this importantly for her students through deep intellectual and academic inquiry. And I think that was the hallmark of the kind of radical activism that she propelled. When I became chair in 2015, I was lucky enough to work more closely with Professor Samad-Matías, and she was that fierce advocate of her students and was committed to diversifying the curriculum. She was ahead of her times in thinking beyond discrete disciplinary borders and taught in anthropology, Black studies, Latin American and Latino studies, international and global studies, and for Middle East and North African studies, alongside, of course, for a time serving as the director of women's studies. She cared so deeply about her courses and putting them in a strong rotation so that she could reach all students. Her signature courses, as were mentioned, included courses that she developed, created, health issues and alternatives, violation of human rights, Islamic cultures and issues, global Islamic women, and immigrant and refugee movements and cultures. These are courses that in that last year while she was on leave, she was adamant that I had to keep on the books and find the appropriate scholar to teach them. We can see the legacies of these courses then in our department and in her former students' multiple paths. These classes are more important than ever. Professor Samad-Matías spoke multiple languages, and she brought an enormous wealth of personal and professional experience, not only to the classroom, but to her work in the department. She was a go-to member of countless departmental committees and a holder of institutional knowledge and history that informed the very department that we are today. For example, she supported thinking expansively about becoming a consolidated department and was quite optimistic and excited by the departmental changes and the new energy and vision of the Colin Powell School, led by Dean Rich. And as my colleagues in the room can attest to, she welcomed a series of new faculty members into the department with her kindness, her strength, her wisdom, and often with her delicious samosas. As we became the Department of Anthropology and Interdisciplinary Programs, she pushed us to remain true to our anti-racist pedagogical commitments and to the power of decolonial knowledge production in service of the communities in which we live and work. Professor Samad-Matías, you are beloved, you are missed, and we will continue to do the work in your honor. And so on behalf of the department, we extend our deepest condolences to the professor's friends, families, colleagues, communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean, Rich, and Lottie. Those were really great tributes to Mommy. I'm the youngest of four, and I had my own unique experience with her, and I consider myself a campus baby because I was always coming here. Mommy grew up in the Bronx and then East Elmhurst, Queens. And East Elmhurst is next to LaGuardia Airport. She always heard planes flying over. She told me the stories of that. And I think that created that wanderlust that she had for travel that she had throughout her life. And she ended up working at the library. Her first job was at the New York Public Library on Astoria Boulevard. She took me to see it a few years ago when I had a rental car. And I think that just really made her over the moon. She still had a light in her eyes when she spoke about it, because she was the bibliophile. Everybody knew that about her. When I look at all the things I had to order for her from Amazon, a good 70% were books. Always something that she wanted to teach about, she was interested in learning about, heard about on Democracy Now!, you name it. And I think her first word was why. After Mama and Dada, it was probably why, because she was always so curious. And her mother, who passed when she was 9, was a school teacher. So she started the 3 generations of teachers. My sister is a school teacher also. So it's 3 generations of teachers in our family. And I believe that she created that, she filled that curiosity that Mommy had for learning. And just also, she didn't see herself only as a teacher. She saw herself as a lifelong student. And she always said the exchange that she had. And transitioning in COVID-19 to teaching online was a challenge. And it was a collective thing that we did together. A few of us did together to help her get to that point. And she really just was like, I have to teach. And she enjoyed that process. And she told the students, you have to engage also. I grade you on engaging. You're not going to just have me talking to you, and I have to make sure you're digesting what I'm teaching. So I say this to say she made sure that our household embodied her many interests of politics, of international cultures. We had so many people from around the world visit us, and some were notables like Walter Rodney, Dr. Walter Rodney, who wrote How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, and she used his book until the end, far past his demise. And she was an activist. She made sure that I was an activist. And I was at protests. Some of my first pictures are at marches and at protests as a toddler. And she had me speak in Times Square at like 12 years old. And there was a lot of pressure, but I appreciate that she put that out there and made sure that we had to be as curious as she was, because her favorite thing, and I told her, it's not good to sleep listening to BBC Worldwide, but her favorite thing was to like always know what was going on in the world. If she missed a day of news, I think that's why we kept cable on, because she had to watch CNN and watch all the news and digest it all. So I'm going off the script, and I'm a writer, but I'll say she focused on our intelligence, our culture, and never caring about Fifth Avenue. She told me all the time, she's like, I have these clothes she didn't say back in the day, I'm being informal, but she said, I have these clothes, the trends are gonna come back. I don't care about Fifth Avenue, I don't care about appearances, I care about how you think, how smart you are, how developed you are. And that was really emphasized, to not be superficial. That was a really big part of her character. And let's see, what other thing? She taught for 60 years, 50 years here. But she started, so when she passed, it was the anniversary of when she started in junior high schools. So she originally started as a junior high school teacher in El Barrio on 106th Street and Madison Avenue. And about 40 years later, she was invited, our mother who was Muslim, was invited to speak and was honored at a Pentecostal church, Castle Hill Pentecostal Church, I believe. Really, this is a testimony to New York and how diverse we are, by one of her first students, who said that she was so impactful in her life, and a lovely Nuyorican woman, said, I need to honor you. And I said, well, this is really unique. And it was, so I went, and it was, they converted a theater into a church on Castle Hill, and she was honored. And she was so touched that this woman remembered her, who'd kept in touch with her throughout the years. And she had so many relationships with former students, because they weren't just students to her, they were friends. And that just was true to who she was. So the reason why she became a professor was because her principal, who ended up being one of her mentors, saw that potential in her. And he said, I really think you should be teaching at the academic level. And that's why she pursued that master's, and how she ended up working here. And she truly loved this campus. And as she was getting better from her cognitive stroke, which caused her to lose her ability to speak, and first even comprehend, and she did a lot of speech therapy. She took it all as classes. She couldn't say the term session, so she said, I'm going to classes. I'm going to sessions, but she saw it as classes. And the reason why those bags are maps, the gift bags that I put together, they're symbolic of her, was because as part of the speech language pathology, they asked me what were my mother's interests, our mother's interests. And I said she loves maps, she loves traveling, she loves the world. So she had a map, and they would get her to like pull out her speech. And when you're a polyglot, you have more information when you have not an injury, it's not a traumatic brain injury, when you have an issue like a stroke, you have more information to help you get your language skills back. So she was staring at the map with her main speech language pathologist and pointing to Cuba, pointing to Puerto Rico, pointing to Jamaica, and was trying to explain the history of those islands. And the speech language pathologist is like, what is she saying? I said, she's telling you that those places have similar colonial histories, a commonality of having been colonized by the Spaniards. And I was like, Mommy, is that what you're saying? She was like, yes, because she couldn't help but want to teach, but also learn. And so for her, people didn't know this, a lot of people don't know this about her. She loved to travel in New York City also. She hadn't taken public transportation for years, but she could still tell me if I was deep out in Queens, what train I needed to connect to and what bus. And I was like, how do you know this? Like, you haven't taken public transport in like 20-something years. So her first gift she would give people was a map, a train map of New York, show them the lay of the land. And she said, we New Yorkers are not Americans. This is our ethnicity. We are separated physically, geographically from the United States, and we are nothing like the rest of this country. She was a very proud New Yorker. She was a very proud mother. She was a very proud teacher. So in the bags, there's a little luggage, a mini luggage, that has her favorite tea, Joshanda, so you all can keep your immunity up throughout this winter, upcoming winter. It's from Pakistan. It's made out of licorice, but it doesn't taste like American licorice, and it tastes really good. And it has her favorite ginger honey crystals candies They were the tea that she would put in her coffee, and she would drink all the time. So those are things, because she told people to always travel, expand your mind, see the world, not limit yourself to your ethnicity or where you're from. And there's a bookmark with her favorite quote, because she always said not to stereotype people. And I just want people to remember her in their own way, always have a piece of her, and that map bag is really just to help people expand. Her legacy lives on, and the last thing I'll say is a few days before she passed, which was right around Labor Day, we were at her friend who's here, family friend, Fatima's house on 145th Street and 8th. Sorry, I'm telling all your business. And we took a ride, and we tried while she was in speech therapy to take access ride through the campus. But the campus is closed for cars during the week, so she could only see the gate. She really missed being here, really, really missed being here. And so that was a Sunday, and I didn't know the campus would open, but we're close to Central Park West, so there's really no reason that cab would have rerouted to come up this hill. But she'd gotten her speech back so much that she and I were like, you're going the wrong way to the cab driver. But by divine intervention, the cab went through the campus, and she was somber. And in many cultures in Islam, I heard that people know that they're passing 40 days before. I didn't hear that until after. And I was making jokes like, I think NAC is nice because of the renovation, but the exterior of NAC, I was like, ugh. And I was like, but I love the Catholic buildings, and Mommy was just somber. And I'm just glad that she got to come through this campus where she truly was devoted. She had another office in the house, which I had a love-hate relationship for. And I said to her, can you ever stop teaching? And she's like, no. Like, not about not teaching in school. I'm talking about life. Like, she wanted to learn, but she was always teaching. And she actually I think she was ready to retire. She wanted to do one more semester, see her students that were graduating. She's still with us in spirit, and I appreciate you all for helping do this tribute.
Greetings. On behalf of the newly established Black Studies Department here at the City College of New York, I bring condolences and I bring greetings. I'm Jervette Ward, Chair of Black Studies, and I am deeply honored and deeply humbled to be here, because even though I never had the pleasure or the opportunity to meet Professor Samad-Matías in person, and after hearing all of these amazing things, I'm even more sad that I didn't have that opportunity. I am here in this role because of her, and I'd like to tell you about that. Professor Samad-Matías was a member of the original Black Studies Department that had been established back in 1969 following the takeover and the famous 5 demands. Yet, when Black Studies was dismantled and turned into a program in 1996, she remained committed to the program and continued to teach and serve the students and community like so many have told you about. Later, when students and faculty advocated and pushed the administration for the reestablishment of a Black Studies department, she was at the forefront of the cause even as she was in the latter years of her career. She continued to serve on the executive committee of the Black Studies program, which oversaw the search for a new director in 2023. Professor Lori Woodard served as the chair of the search committee for the director of Black Studies, which became the chair of Black Studies, me. I was selected as a finalist for the position, but the Black Studies Executive Committee needed to vote to confirm the selection, and 4 of the 5 members of the committee have voted. Yet one person hadn't voted. And Professor Woodard was reaching out, trying to reach that last member, and she couldn't reach her. That person was Professor Samad-Matías. Professor Woodard kept trying to reach out, and she couldn't get a response. She finally reached the daughter of Professor Samad-Matías, who informed her that her mother was incredibly ill and wasn't working. However, when Dr. Woodard informed her daughter why she was reaching out, her daughter immediately said, "Oh, my mom would want to be a part of this vote." And she said she would want this vote to be finalized. And she said, "I'm gonna let my mom know." One of the last professional actions taken by Professor Samad-Matías was to send an email confirming her affirmative vote for my hire to start as the Director of Black Studies and to begin the process for the reestablishment of the Black Studies Department here at CCNY. I began at CCNY on August 25th, 2023. And sadly, Professor Samad-Matías passed away on September 8th, 2023. Sadly, our paths were never able to cross in person, yet her legacy lives on. She voted and entrusted me and so many of us with a duty, a responsibility, a task. On June 24th, 2024, the CUNY Board of Trustees voted to reestablish the Black Studies Department. And on July 1st, 2024, the City College of New York once again has a Black Studies Department. Professor Samad-Matías is no longer with us, and I am so deeply sad that I never had the opportunity to thank her in person for her steadfast commitment and dedication to Black studies. It never wavered. I hope that she is proud of the work that we are doing and that we are continuing to do in her honor. Power to the people. May she rest in power. Thank you.
Greetings to everybody, and I would like to thank you for coming out for a very important occasion. This had been scheduled once before, and unfortunately, due to illness, I wasn't able to come. So in a way, everything worked itself out because the memorial is being held today, and I've been able to be here. I'll introduce myself very briefly. My name is Arthur Spears, and I'll tell you what my connection is to the college and also to Asha. I came here in 1983, and I retired in 2016. So from the time that Asha joined the anthropology, or rather anthropology and interdisciplinary studies department, we were colleagues. I was also director of the Black Studies program from 2007 to 2010. So we worked together in that capacity. And I was also one of the auxiliary faculty members in Black Studies for all the time that I was here. So I came in contact with Asha from the beginning of my period here at City College, and of course that lasted through until the end. What I want to do is point out some things that stand out in my mind about Asha. And I'm going to preface it all by saying Margaríta-Asha Samad-Matías was sorely underappreciated. She was sorely underappreciated. And sometimes I think that going about all the things that I had to do between being a faculty member, teaching 7 courses per year, and we taught 7 courses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, for several years. And then finally we started, some of us, getting 1 course off for unsponsored research or sponsored research. I'm going to point out 3 things. And the first was her extraordinary networking. And I'm going to give you some examples. The second thing is her knowledge. Her knowledge was vast. And the third thing is her departmental citizenship. Okay, these are the things, there are many things that I could say about my colleague Asha, but these are the things that stand out in my mind and that really affected me personally, as a colleague and as a friend. First of all, her networking. Asha seemed to know everything there is to know about the African diaspora global network. She would tell me about conferences and various events throughout the Americas all over the world that I had no idea of. I've tried to keep up with Black studies, even though my primary field is linguistics, even though I was in anthropology, that's what I got my degree in. But I tried to keep up with African diaspora activities, conferences, and so on and so forth. But it wasn't until I started talking to Asha that I found out how much is going on that unfortunately is not reported in your favorite newspaper, the New York Times. It wasn't simply that she knew about these events. She went, or if she didn't go, she heard about them. And let me just give you a few examples. She brought scholars, particularly from Latin America, to the campus. And one of the scholars that I met through Asha's efforts was an Uruguayan. And you may ask, what's my special interest in Uruguay, what's my connection? But I spent a year there on a Fulbright scholarship. And so we immediately connected. We had so many things in common. I hadn't been back to Uruguay in years and so on and so forth. But the other thing that I'm going to mention was even more extraordinary. At certain times, I've developed a particular interest in certain countries. And as you can imagine, Brazil was one of them because of their huge diasporan population. So as fate would have it, I was going to Brazil. And I must have mentioned it to Asha because she contacted me while I was there. And I was in Rio de Janeiro. And I got an email from Asha saying, they're looking for an international speaker and they'd like to have somebody from the United States that speaks Portuguese and that can come and participate in the inauguration of one of the graduate programs at the Federal University of Bahia. And as several of you may know, Bahia is in the northeast of Brazil. Brazil is the country with the largest percentage of African descent people. And Bahia is actually in the city of Salvador, which is considered the city that has retained most, or the largest number, I should say, of African traditions that were brought over with those who were taken to Brazil. So she said they would like to have somebody, and I thought of you, and I said, well, that would be fine, because I hadn't planned to go to Bahia, but I always like to go to Bahia. I simply hadn't planned to do it on that trip. And I got in, she put the people in contact with me, to make a long story short. And I ended up going there for about a week, giving a series of lectures, not only at the University of Bahia, Federal University of Bahia, but also at various research institutes and various kinds of organizations that were there in the city. Not only that, it turns out she had gotten in contact with someone she had once brought over for dinner at my house. And some of you may have been there that night. But anyway, it turns out he was a faculty member at a university nearby. So when he found out I was coming up, he got in contact. And then I left Bahia and went there, Cachoeira, for those of you who are familiar with the northeast of Brazil. And gave some lectures, learned about the university, and so on and so forth. And by the time I got back home, I said, how did that happen? I had given about 8 lectures in the Bahia area. It was all set up through her contacts. She's the one who made it happen. She remembered that I happened to be going there at that time, and that I fit the bill for what they wanted to do. Just one big example. The second thing is her knowledge. May I be candid? Good. I'm glad you've given me permission. I'm going to say something very briefly about the M word. And it's not the one you're thinking about, or the one you may be thinking about. It's misogyny. Asha was underappreciated. And that's what I said to start off. Before I actually met and got to know Asha, what I had heard about her did not match who she was. It didn't match who she was. Running around like crazy, it took a few years for me to actually get to know Asha better. And by the way, professors have a very heavy load. We have to teach, we have to go to meetings, we have to publish, we have to do this, we have to do that. I don't know whether anybody really appreciates all we have to do, but anyway. So I, one day, for some reason or other, needed some information on the immigration system, and particularly what was going on here in New York City. And so I asked Asha a quick question, and she answered it and gave me some additional information. And we ended up talking, I don't know how long, and scheduling a continuation of that conversation because I was learning so much about refugees and about the immigration situation right here in New York City where I had been living. It is unbelievably complex. The politics of it, the money flows, not to mention the flows of individuals and so on and so forth. I got in the habit of asking Asha when there was something I wanted to know more about, something I needed to know more about, and the information just came out more than I could handle. The other thing, and I'm going to wrap this up quickly, is that I always thought of her as organic with City College. She had so much institutional knowledge, and compared to many of us, she had been here so long. If I wanted to understand something better, something like Black studies, I asked Asha a few questions, and she put it all in context. And I was walking with sure footing afterwards because of the information I had gotten from her. The last thing is departmental citizenship. Anthropology was for many years under the gun. And it wasn't easy to be a member of the anthropology department, knowing that we had a hatchet hanging from above, just waiting to come down and chop our necks off. So we were living with that. It's one of the reasons that we had to teach as many courses as we did. But Asha was teaching as a lecturer 4 + 5, 9 courses per academic year, which is absolutely unfathomable. But even more important, at one point we were reorganizing and updating the anthropology curriculum. My idea was anthropology, we were a small department, we didn't have many resources, but we could always be the people who had some kind of vision and who could take initiatives. And so reorganizing the curriculum was one of the things that I said we should do, and we worked on that. Asha, in spite of all of the things that she had that made her hands full, very graciously and willingly and energetically joined in as much as she could these initiatives to make the department shine. I never heard anything negative from her. And that's amazing, because there's a lot of negative stuff in our wonderful city. But as I think about it, it's amazing how positive she was, and how positively she could talk about negative things. Okay. And that's what made her such a wonderful colleague. And I'll end with one thing in terms of her departmental citizenship. When we were working on the curriculum, I knew it, but it really hit me. You know, sometimes we know things, but they're in the back of our mind, and something makes them really come to the forefront of our minds. And I said, she is single-handedly maintaining several tracks in the department: medical anthropology, immigration and refugee matters, okay, North Africa, the things she did in the Americas, and so on and so forth. And that without those 9 courses she was teaching, it would have been a very different and impoverished department. So I just want to leave you with those things and stress. It needs to be stressed that she was an important colleague, not just a beloved colleague, but an important colleague, a necessary colleague, because she helped us with all that she did, including the courses, get through those lean years. So I am very happy to be here and tell the story, as they say. Thank you for listening.
A pleasant good afternoon to all. Greetings. My name is Herbert Signory. I'm the Director for Academic Advising in the Colin Powell School. And I was a colleague of Professor Matthias was a very compassionate colleague of mine. And I'm happy to be here to share my memories of her. Teacher, mentor, activist, scholar, compassionate colleague. These are some of the words I would use to describe her. She was a professor who had a holistic approach in how she prepared her students. And Leila and others have mentioned her vision for a global study, for having seen the world not limited to only New York, but an idea of we seeing the world in its entirety. And to get that to her students, one thing she encouraged students to do was to apply for study abroad. And we in the academic advising office would be constantly bombarded with students who she referred to us so that we could encourage them to utilize the resources that were available for them, because there are resources available for students, but not all students utilize these resources. And she was one because of a vision to open students' eyes to see the world in its entirety, that they would use study abroad as an opportunity to broaden their vision. And we work with students constantly to encourage them to use those resources. Many of our students face issues with housing insecurity and food insecurity, and these are very difficult conversations to have with students. And because of her personality and the empathy that she emitted and the compassion that she emitted, students felt comfortable with having these discussions with her. And this was another way that she formed a bridge with her students so that they utilized the resources through the dean's office, so that if there was issues of food or housing insecurity, they could use that to build the support they needed to help them in their studies. And because of the person she was, she made this possible for students. A lot has been said in her workload. She taught over 7-8 classes a semester. And that was in a period when I have a vision of Professor Matthias wheeling the monitor from the iMedia Center all over NAC. Elevator working or non-working, so those of you who are familiar with the building would understand the difficulty of maneuvering the technology in that period. Because she did not limit her teaching to only reading that she gave them, but utilizing audiovisual resources so that students could vision the world we live in through different media. So that is one of the things I constantly remember her with, the audiovisual cat moving around. But beyond the number of classes she taught, one of the things she would take on is working with students for their independent studies. Many times students apply to graduate but have not met all the requirements in terms of the number of credits they need to graduate. And although she had a heavy workload, she would extend herself to work with students to meet that requirement. So imagine having to do a full workload, but working with students individually to write papers, and that's something that she did beyond her office hours and on weekends. So If you're a family member, that's something you would be familiar with. The couple of students who were not able to make it today, who shared some of their vision and their remembrance of her, and I'm going to share it with you right now. One of them is Valerie Polulo, who actually now works in the Academic Advising Office. You have 1 minute. And Valerie says, if I had to capture the essence of Professor Matías's in a few words, it would be no easy task. Her kindness and sincerity were boundless, and always attentive to her students and ready to lend a helping hand to anyone in need. She saw qualities in me that perhaps I did not see in myself. I will miss her heartfelt conversations, her gentle spirit, and the warmth she radiated. Her compassion and benevolence will forever remain stuck in my memory. To those fortunate enough to cross her path, she was a source of light, generosity, and love. Her passing leaves a profound sadness. However, my love for her transcends even this loss, and I will always remain faithful to the legacy of kindness, justice, and equality, and strength she left with me. May she rest as she lived, in peace, surrounded by love. May Allah grant her Jannah. There's another student who also worked with her and who she mentored. His name is Tao Baptiste, and he had a few words to say. Her holistic exploration of the contributions of Africa to global humanity, her gentle yet fervent exploration of students to critically dive deeper into what they thought they knew. And as we mentioned, she was an activist scholar, and I remember her fighting to retain the status of the Black Studies Department as a department. And I'm happy that that fight has been won, and we have retained, and the Black Studies program has now gone back to the status of department. And that was an easy fight, but the fight of all those who fought during that period, the foundation was laid so that this can be seen today again. She's gone and she'll be missed, but her success and her legacy lives on in the success of her students and those she has touched. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Georgina Falou, and I had to come and have to pay homage to the incredible, impressive academic, scholar, activist that Samad-Matías represented not only for me, but for everyone who came across and met her. My area really was business and finance. I was the first woman dean of business school in Puerto Rico, 175 faculty members and 3,500 students. But came to New York eventually, and throughout all that period, I attended Berkeley with a master, Harvard with a diploma, Columbia with a doctorate, and I never heard anything of the real history of the Black and the Africans diaspora throughout the world. Then suddenly I met Dr. Ben and heard him and said, what is he talking about? I never heard any of that. And I became reading books until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning every day, translated 4 of his books, 400 pages, to Spanish. And the director of the Black Studies heard me and said, would you like to come and teach at Black Studies at City College? And I said, well, I'm interested in the Afro-Latinos. Well, create a course. And I did create the course called here Afro-Latino History and Culture. And when I came from business to finance to the Black Studies program, met Professor Samad-Matías. And that was a support incredible because I was in totally another field. But I come to speak of her projection in the international front. Her command of several languages, Spanish being one of them, helped for us to organize and plan and carry on programs in different areas throughout the world. And I come to testify to that aspect. First one was in Honduras. There was a conference there of the Africans diaspora throughout Latin America. And I spoke to her, and she supported me to mobilize Afro-Latinos, descendants, to attend the conference, to write, to do research, because one of the realities of us is that so little has been written. Because first of all, there weren't programs enough throughout higher education to motivate people to do the research. If you don't have master and doctoral programs, you don't have that much research because there are no students of those areas, and therefore no publications are promoted because most students are interested in completing their degrees, and if the program is not there, it doesn't happen. And at that moment, one of the things that we organized, and Samad-Matías was crucial in assisting me, is creating the Falou Foundation, which I'm still president after 36 years. And one of the purposes of that foundation was to do research and to publish, document the real history of the Africans in the diaspora, but more than that, to help us understand Africa, because that's one of the problems that exists. We don't know enough about Africa. And worse than that is we don't want to know, because that's the reality of most blacks throughout Latin America. And that, of course, is a result of the socioeconomic kind of occultism that has prevailed, ignoring the presence of the black population. And at that moment, Matías and I worked in one of the conferences in Colombia where 13 million people are blacks. And I went there and lectured at the university. And even though it's 13 million people, it's totally ignored throughout the country, or was ignored, because very happy to announce that that was the country that first published or created the first law requiring Afro-Colombian history from first grade to the university. In United States, that still is not a requirement. There's not a single district in United States where it's a requirement for students to read about the African diaspora descendant history as a requirement. There are some alternatives available. I happened to be here at the time when there was this incredible movement to eliminate Black Studies as a department. And me coming from outside kept asking myself, this is in the middle of Harlem, how come there could not be a Black Studies department? Because once you eliminate the department status, you eliminate the empowerment of that group, since there's no faculty attached once there's no department. And the programs means that faculty are loyal to their department because that's a reality. The department tenure and decision-making is voted and approved in other departments. You have to go along with the agenda of those departments that direct your future development. So one of the things we try to establish with Colombia and with Honduras is the correspondence of how we were dealing here with that situation and how will they deal with the situation in those countries. A lot of progress has happened after that. But throughout that period, the support and the work of Samad-Matías, working with me in many of those projects, was crucial, because in reality, you feel yourself alone. There's so few others that not only are willing to work, but understand it. Because a reality is that most of us never traveled to Africa. One of the books I wrote has to do with the African descendants from Latin America. And the ones present here usually are here 3 or 4 years after they have left their countries. And since the racism and discrimination, they are pervades all aspects of life, then that's the characteristic that prepare for many of the Afro-Latinos here in the United States, and they bring their experience to be projected in the reality that they are living. So I could say that I'm like one exception, because when I go back to Puerto Rico, having been at the university for many years, even my professional black friends say Falu is coming with the story of the Afro and the African history. And if they invite me to speak, sometimes they say, we want you to choose another topic. I say, no, I'm speaking about that topic because you travel to Spain, to France in vacation. When are you going to travel to Africa? And I was blessed, I feel, because I traveled to South Africa where I met Mandela while he was president, traveled to Zimbabwe where I met Mugabe while he was president, traveled to Egypt with Dr. Ben, went into the pyramids, and that's where I started translating my first book of Stolen Legacy, which I would suggest all of us read if you want to start your reading list. And then, of course, follow Dr. Ben because he was talking of things I had never heard. Even though my family in Puerto Rico was a black family, where my father founded in 1939 the Association Toward the Progress of the Black Puerto Rican. See, 1939. In other words, they were activists in there, but they didn't know anything about Africa. They didn't know anything about history. And it has been my mission to go wherever I go to promote the learning about Africa, visiting Africa, reading, but more than that, writing. But to write, you have to research. And if there are no programs, graduate programs, the young people don't have the motivation to research because they're busy securing their degrees. I remember when I taught here Black Studies, I prepared the book, and I make sure I didn't got it registered as a book because it wouldn't have been admitted to be taught, because I was talking of things that I never heard in any other area, in any other course, in any other program, directly from my experiences. But Samad-Matías was working consistently in me. So when we went to Honduras, there she was, working with me in some of the presentations that we were doing to the Afro-descendants that were meeting in Central America. And when I then joined the African Union, the ambassador to the United Nations African Union, there is an office here of that ambassador. He's ambassador of the African countries, which are kind of developing and becoming like European conglomerate, even though it's taking more time, of course, because we're talking of 52 countries, each one with their own priorities and their own objectives specifically. But we work in the African Union, and Samad-Matías was there helping me because we wrote the first proposal and the first document where the African Union was extending the hand to the diaspora, because in Africa then itself didn't know enough about us throughout the Americas, throughout any other place in the world where they're black. People don't realize that in Latin America there's over 200 million blacks. Colombia alone is 13 million or more. Of course, Brazil, we all know, is the one most well known. But Peru, where I lecture also, there are communities of 99.9 black. Costa Rica, where they do a parade every Osiri to honor Marcus Garvey, because that's where he went after he was pushed out of the United States. And they honor the history of Marcus Garvey, and they're trying to emulate what happened in Colombia by designing a law to require Afro-descendants history in Costa Rica to be required throughout the curriculum in their schools. So to me, it's an honor to come back to City College. It's an honor to present my memories of the incredible Samad-Matías. I encourage, still working very hard in Falu Foundation, to do research and to publish And most families don't realize that their history is a contribution towards civilization, knowledge, and information, because still we don't know enough about the Black history and developments. I thank you so much for allowing me to speak, and God honor Samad-Matías, and thank you for the Black Studies Department, which now is a reality. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rado Petrovic, and I'm former student of Professor Samad-Matías. And I was fortunate. I have no script, and I will speak by my heart. I was extraordinarily fortunate to have the Professor Samad-Matías in my class. And I took that for fun. And then I realized that she had so massive knowledge of what she was teaching us. And the class was so different people and from all walks of life, and we've been fortunate to listen to her. She was so simple, so teaching us so directly that I was impressed. And she was talking about the global issues, the ethnicity, affiliation, the religion, and so forth. So she was, I took all her classes, like 6, 7, something like that. And I was really impressed. Whatever I took, that was my new experience, a new level of knowledge, and that was regarding the class. And I knew her from a cafe because I was running the cafe, and she was coming all the time and buying the coffee and brownies and and that kind of stuff. And she says one day, "Oh well, Rado, you need to go and see Dean." Andy Rich, he's so good, and he will help you, and he will show you how to apply for scholarship or whatever. I said, "Oh, thank you very much," and she always gave me the names and the phone numbers and information, and I never did that. And so one day I was we had a presentation in a class, and I was always the first one to present my research, whatever that was essay about. And after that, in the class, one roommate was working on a 42nd flat on the building and construction. And then the winter was so beastly, so harsh, and he was saying, "Oh well, I cannot present today. Can you give me another opportunity to present that research and for that essay?" And she says, "Of course, I will do that." And then he disappeared, and then she came next day to cafe, and she said, "Do you have his number?" I said, "I think I have." And so she was tracking down that guy, and he disappeared. He never came back to the class. And we tried to find him, and and finally she found him, and she brought him back into the class, and it was really stunning and so touchy, and her persistence and energy and to help to do whatever she could, and so that was really Samad-Matías professor legacy to stay in my memory forever.
Good evening, everyone. It's a somber moment for me. I remember when Lala asked me if I wanted to be a speaker here, and I thought it was a rhetorical question. I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be one of the guest speakers. My name is Sean Millwood. I'm one of her former students. And I have so many stories to speak about her, but I'm going to keep it really simple. She's one of the reasons why I became a teacher. She's one of the reasons why I majored in anthropology. I saw the lasting impact she has on her students, and I wanted to at least try to have the kind of impact with my students as well. She was always friendly, always smiling, extremely, extremely generous. I'm going to share something with you that not many people know, because she doesn't speak about this. In my final year at the college year, City College, I did study abroad in Spain. And she said, Sean, you need to go to Morocco. And I said, I don't remember what I said, but she said she's actually sponsored my trip. She paid for my hotel, and she paid for my airfare to go to Morocco. And I couldn't believe that she really did that for me. All she asked me to do was just to, when I come back, to speak about my experience in the class. That's all she asked of me. And that's something that I always live with. And because of that, I always try to give back as well, right? As many of you guys mentioned, she has a wealth of information, and she always immerses herself in different cultures. I'm from Jamaica, and she recommended a book, and that book, to this day, is one of the best books I've ever read about Jamaica. It was enlightening. It's called Life or Death. The documentary itself is also amazing. I didn't know a lot about my own island. And that documentary, well, again, as I said before, was enlightenment. Additionally, at the time I was in college, I was living in the Bronx. She told me about one of the best organic restaurants in the Bronx, and of course I went to. So today is a somber day, right? I'm going to leave this with you guys. Isaiah 57, verses 1 through 2, it says, "The godly often die before their time. For those who follow godly path will rest in peace when they die." Thank you, guys.
Greetings. My name is Dr. Harcourt Fuller. I'm a professor of African and African diaspora history at Georgia State University in Atlanta. It really saddens me to be making this video at this point, because I loved Professor Samad-Matías. Professor Matías did so much for me as a person, and eventually for my career. You know, when I lived in New York as a young immigrant from Jamaica, and when I went to City College, she was one of those professors that was a bedrock for my experiences living and studying in New York City. She was very, very encouraging to students like myself. She always spoke about the need to know our history, and she pushed us. You know, she gave us permission to have to dream and to have to be ambitious and to go after what we wanted in life. Specifically, you know, I used to, you know, she was one of my advisors, and you know, at the time I was majoring in Latin American and Caribbean studies with a focus on the African diaspora in the Americas, particularly in you know, in Latin America. And Professor Matias, what she would do is, anytime I came back from a trip, so I would go to Peru, to places where you have people of African descent, which included Lima and Chincha. And I would also go to Ecuador, for example, where you also have people of African descent in Quito, in Guayaquil, in El Valle del Chota. Whenever I returned from those trips back to City College, Professor Samad-Matías would actually allow me to come into her classroom and give a talk, give a lecture about my research in South America or in the Caribbean. And this, you know, for a young, you know, person, a teenager, also in my early 20s, this gave me a lot of confidence. And in fact, this put me on the path of becoming a professor. You know, she invited me into her classes to just give talks about those experiences. I would share slides. I would share, you know, music. I brought back material culture, and you know, she just again gave me the confidence to know that this is something that I can do. And so she, you know, Professor Samad-Matías is responsible for me becoming a professor, a filmmaker, and some of the other things that I've become today. And so I really thank her for everything that she did for me personally, but also everything she did for our community, because she supported so many other, you know, students, staff members, and faculty members. She was the cultural life of City College. She made it a community, not just somewhere that you go to study or to teach or to work. And so I pray that the ancestors will accept her with open arms and that she will rest in power. I want to thank the family, particularly my great friend Alicia, for just always being there as well. And I want to again express my condolences to the family. But I do want to say that Professor Samad-Matías is a great woman. She touched many lives, and her legacy will live on forever and ever in the family members that she touched, in the colleagues whose lives she positively impacted, and in life learners like myself. Peace and blessings to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for being here, and thank you to the speakers for your tributes.